Welcome to the settlement. I'm Fen, and this is the Outskirts and You, which is going to be a look at the scout system that comes in the Gambler's Chest expansion. It's going to be an overview of how it all works, a breakdown of all the individual pieces, a little bit of analysis of the gear, talking about it, and then at the back end I'm going to actually review it all, the whole scout system as a separate entire expansion, because it's very much a component, a module you can plug in and out of the game as you desire. It features these lovely lads and lasses who models I have mixed feelings on. Love the design of them, love the aesthetic, love the storytelling. I just struggle with painting them because they have cloaks attached. Cloaks on miniatures are always a problem for me because I don't like knowing that the back section of a model, like here, is not painted properly. So I end up having to part paint the models, which is I assemble them partially, undercoat them, then pull the cloak back off to paint the whole thing, and then assemble it as and when each piece is completed. I'm doing that right now with Pattern Survivor in Gamma. I've got her here, and she's basically missing the back half of her torso because there she is. Not you can see her. Because I'm currently painting the lion's skin cape, I think it is, lion cape, separately. I've painted her back, I've painted the areas that are normally concealed by it, and then I'm going to, once the cloak's done, pop it back on. So, love the models, just have a personal gripe that models with capes and cloaks take me longer to paint and are more awkward. Okay, so we'll zoom out a second for the whole system. Here's everything that comes in it, or is related to it. We got the rules, we got the grid, we got the stuff to do with the Lamplighter, which we'll get into, Outskirts, all of its gear, the innovation, the resource, scout discoveries over here, and a scout hunt up here. Going to cover all of this. I'm hoping it won't take an incredibly long time. For example, let's get into the rules. I'm going to be providing just an overview of each of the bits and pieces, and I'm going to go into actual details of those separate pieces in order. So, to add scouts, you get the Extinguished, Guidepost, Lantern Year 1 Settlement Timeline event. You replace Pictograph from the box with the one that comes in this expansion, which you can just see over there. You replace one of the basic hunt events with this, and then all the other bits and pieces and components are brought into play by Extinguished Guidepost, like this Death Pact and Outskirts. The Scout has its own unique gear grid. It is the only grid that can hold stuff with the Scout keyword, which I think is a nice wrinkle. You cannot have cursed gear either, so if a survivor has a cursed gear, they cannot be the Scout. Basically, whenever you go out to hunt, you can choose to have a fifth survivor come along. They will wear this dreaded pack, and they will act as more or less a normal survivor on the hunt phase. They have a couple of awkward keywords to deal with, but nothing absolutely disastrous. And the showdown, they are a fifth survivor who is traditionally controlled by whoever is the monster controller. They are slower than a normal survivor, and they have less flexibility and depth because they only have 4 slots for gear rather than the usual 9. Losing 5 slots is very, very significant, but they do still get their full survival, which means they can provide things with useful survival actions, and they still hit as hard as a normal survivor. They may be slower and less mobile, but they can output a normal amount of damage, especially because they're not disabled from having surge or anything like that. They have a capability to conceal themselves with a mechanic that's here. If all the other survivors die, then the scout will have an opportunity at the start of their turn, either hunt phase turn or the start of their turn in the showdown, to perform logistics of death. They can choose to try and finish the fight, and if they're close to the end, that might be what you do, but you are every single time just risking things even further. If the dreaded pack gets lost, you do not get another one except under certain rare events. It's quite hard to lose the pack in most cases, but it does have the heavy keyword, which is awkward. We have scout discoveries. I'll go through those in full, but they're a nice little bonus for the first time you beat a level 3 version of a given monster. You draw the scout card for them, you roll a dice, you follow the things that are listed, you get a bit of insight into the monsters, maybe some new gear or resources or abilities. It's quite interesting. It's one of my favourite parts of the scouts. And also you get this corresponded monster tablet gear that provides like extra tactics and insights for fighting a specific monster. It's probably the best, like most unique aspect that the scout can bring to the showdown. I think it's really cool to have a survivor who is sort of operating from a manual, so to speak, and supporting everyone else, like do this, do this, do this. The only negative is, if you've already killed a level 3 version of the monster, you're kind of not going to face it much more. Maybe 2 times more, unless it's your preferred level 3 like hunt target for the foreseeable future. So it's got a lot of limited life. I kind of wish it popped this triggered on the first time you beat a level 2, because then you would have a bit more of a lifespan. I get like having the level 3 thematically makes sense, but sometimes it's just could be a little more. I want this happening more. The scout here, like making their notes and reading them out and telling the survivors, hey, do this, do that, do this, and get these benefits. That's really sweet. Okay, right, so we now need to get to the introductory event, Extinguished Guidepost, which is this. This takes place in Lantern Year 1. We've got our survivors over here on this page performing their little sort of Death Pact ceremony over the newly formed Death Pact innovation. And let's walk through this. So, Extinguished Guidepost, just outside the settlement, they gather to form a deadly pact. A death pact is formed. They will return with a kill or not at all. An ill-omened stench spreads through the settlement. Following the smell, survivors reach an extinguished guidepost. The foul wind moans through its darkened lamp. On the ground, the survivors find a waxy grey object. Its eye-watering smell prevents them from seeing it clearly. Gagging and weeping, they roll it in layers of cloth until its smell is merely repulsive. The survivors contrive a use for the dreaded pack. Nominate a survivor to accompany the hunting survivors. The dreaded burden is lifted onto their shoulders. They are the scout this lantern year, and they feel a grim responsibility. So they roll on the grid. They gain the scout gear grid, and they must use it instead of a normal grid. And they're coming out as your scout this year, so you decide on this survivor is going to be departing before anything else. We roll dice, 1 to 4. Survivors are fixing the bundle for travel or overcome by its raw stench. For a moment the bundle slips, revealing its foul contents to the scout. Their tears sizzle in their eyes and their hair withers and falls to the ground. They exhale a final sigh of relief before losing consciousness. They lose -1 accuracy and -1 evasion. Not great to happen for your Lantern Year 1 hunt, to have your scout already neutered 40% of the time. They're not going to be a lot of help in the showdown. They can't really do any kind of tanking at that point, not that you want them to. And they may struggle a bit even to hit. And also you're very likely to be sort of lacking enough weapons to cover 5 survivors at this point. So it's quite probable the scout is just going to spend their time like as far away from the monster as possible in a corner. Definitely when I roll the 1 to 4, this scout is retired after we finish that hunt. This is the only time they're coming out, because -1 of accuracy and evasion is... I'm not here for that. On a 5 or a 6, the scout's body adjusts to the weighty burden. Even the smell seems to fade in the background. Without the bundle, the scout feels exposed. They gain anxiety. Anxiety is a fun disorder that I quite like. It doesn't have a particularly large impact here. It reads at the start of the showdown, gain the priority target token unless you have stinky gear in your gear grid. Well, the dreaded pack is stinky. It's also got an opportunity for a benefit, which is you can have an anxious survivor play the role of your tank. You don't give them monster grease. You just let them wear Rawhide, and they can draw the monster's attention guaranteed on the first turn. It's not super powerful, it's usually better to have Monster Grease instead, but that little kind of edge case area where you can take advantage of a disorder is nice. On 7 and 8, the bundle settles onto the Scout's back, it wriggles into place, the feeling is unpleasant, the Scout gains +3 insanity, okay, that's just fine, useful. And then on 9 and 10, the Scout feels new resolve and stands up proud. They're the first to take up this mantle for the settlement, and they gain +1 strength. That's great, as I said during the opening bit. There is absolutely nothing holding back Scouts from dealing good damage. They are a 5th attacker, leveraging against a monster that really usually is only designed to fight 1v4, so there's a large benefit there. Okay, we shall get on to the gear grid. This is a repeat of the text to do with Cursed Gear and Scout keyword gear. This is Fist and Tooth standard, so we have the Dreaded Pack, which is basically occupying 5 slots in this gear grid. I always feel like it should occupy 3. I think that would have been like the number. In fact, I know that is the number that I like and feels fair. 5 is a lot for a system that is already punishing you in other ways, because all your gear effectively has almost irreplaceable. You know, you're anteing it all up right for every hunt. You know, we could lose all of this stuff if we don't win. So, but you know, design is design is design. It's item Scout Stinky Heavy, so it is a gear card. You got to remember that it is stinky, which that's fine. Just remember that the Dung Beetle Knight likes to target stinky survivors, so maybe have somebody else with stinky gear as well if you're fighting the Dung Beetle Knight and have a Scout. Heavy is more of an issue. Heavy does cause deaths of survivors and can self-delete very, very, very rarely, especially when you're dealing with the Scout system. The abilities are -2 movement. That's really bad. 5 movement's great, 4 movement is fine, 3 movement is really awkward. You're going to... Well, I think you should always prioritise paint for dash anyway, but you really, really want to do it here because the Scout sometimes, well, not often, can get caught in very bad positional places and requires a lot of care and attention on positioning. And if you are still learning, or you make a mistake, or you get caught off guard by the AI card that's drawn, you really do want to be able to move the Scout that extra 3 spaces. Sometimes like reactions can just run over the Scout and cause lots of problems, so watch out for that. 3 movement is really, really rough. But luckily many boots add more movement, so we have ways of mitigating this. Its other ability is if you're alone during the hunt or at the start of the act during the showdown, you may enact the Death Pact, which is the innovation to the right, to Logistics of Death. You awaken the Dreaded Pack with its small bell and a blinding stench erupts. I gotta get out of this. I love this tiny bell. Here it is. I don't know what it is. I think for me, in my mind, it plays like a really tiny, like light, almost Christmas belly kind of like ding ding ding. I've got a bell like that from, hang on a minute. In fact, I'm going to get it. This bell hasn't had an outing since the last standee, so I'm going to bring it. Yeah, so this is a little unofficial member of the last standee cast that I got a little carried away with when talking about it. This is the bell from Durian, and this is the little role-playing little extra punch. When it's time to awaken the Dread Pack, we go... And that, I think, is why I kind of like that. I also just thematically like the idea that you ring a bell and it gets super stinky somehow. That's interesting, because it's a playing of sound. And we're going to see that kind of plays into all of the lore and sort of background story of what's going on between all of this. We don't get a full picture, but it's part of the picture that it awakens from a bell. Okay, so Death Pact, Logistics of Death, Special Innovate for Pictograph. That's really good. You get just a hidden organ. I will pop this as soon as I've reached the point where Pictograph is in the deck and I've got resources to do it. Anytime you can innovate a gear card out, not gear card, an innovation card out of the deck without using your normal innovation for the year is really good. And this is one. So I will always use this to get the pictograph rather than normal innovate. Now we're going to go look at logistics of death, which is this page. We'll start first with a little look over here. We have the scout travelling back across the landscape. This is very Starry Night inspired. We got a little face with is this kind of like a moth-like face here. I like how the stars are depicted in Kingdom Death when you do see them. Also, we've zoomed in here very quickly to just briefly look at this this little cloud formation. Has a kind of human-like appearance. Same with these over here. I don't know if this is like the wailing smog, wailing smoke that appears or not, but I also wanted to zoom in here. So this chap I'm not entirely certain on, because I think this might be depicting the Lamplighter, who's going to pop up a bit later, but there are 4 depictions of the Lamplighter, 3 definite depictions, one that I think is the Lamplighter. 2 of them look like this guy. We'll actually see the other one. It's right over here. And it does seem to be the Lamplighter or something like that. It's hard to say for certain. I don't know, because hang on, let's just show you. This is definitely the Lamplighter here. Absolutely. And that furry sort of glowing eyes, monstrous kind of Moor type thing doesn't quite match up. And this maybe this is some other creature. I don't know, but I question because it sort of appears here. And as we go through Lost to the Darkness, it'll make a bit more sense why I'm not entirely sure. It could just be that there are multiple different types of Lamplighters and they look a little bit different. Who knows? We often see unusual monsters that we don't see anywhere else, like this guy. This could be an Easter egg of a Nemesis monster. Let's actually zoom in just a little bit more. We look, see he's like a Janus, almost 3-faced kind of guy fighting with twin sort of stone daggers. Maybe that's a sculptor. Don't know. The sculptor has an inverted face of the hood, so probably not. And we can see it's the same guy here who's been victorious and headed off. So mostly I want to say I enjoy when we see stuff like this, much like I like this face here. I'm wondering even now if this is one of the constellations, and I can't quite recall which one looks like a mosquito with a curled up proboscis, but we'll see. Anyway, this is one of these masterclass pieces of artwork that I really like. All the details, the people down here, there's like half a person hanging from his mouth, more there, and there's the lights of the settlement over here. It's kind of cozy horror, which is really cool. So enough of that, let's get on with this. I'm actually going to have to zoom in this way. So recovery teams for Nemesis fights, we'll go through that first because it's shorter. We just roll a dice on the table, which, as we can see down here, if the survivors are defeated by a Nemesis monster rather than a quarry monster, you do recovery team. Otherwise, when you trigger logistics of death, you'll be doing the long journey home. So 1 to 2 and a 3. Complete obliteration, archive all gear and resources. There are no bodies to recover. In addition, if the survivors fail to half kill the monster, it rampages through the settlement and you archive an additional 2d10 random pieces of gear. So this is a absolutely massive punishment. I believe it exists as counter to the strategy of send 4 survivors, we don't care about them, let them die. Because if you don't play through the fight and make an honest attempt to try and win, and at least get to halfway, you're not just losing the survivors you sent in there, you're losing random pieces of gear. So this is very much designed to sort of stop you gaming it, which is fair enough. But also, when we were talking about this on the last standee, Cara mentioned her experiences with the recovery team, and it basically killed her campaign, and I don't know if she's been back to play again, because this is like a thing that causes almost a jumping off point where some players may look at the game and go, nah, this is not for me. If you're playing with scouts, you're probably an experienced player. If you're introducing new players, maybe don't put scouts in, or play an alternate version of the Scout rules. There is one on my Patreon of like a 5 to 6 player version that uses Scouts for the 5th and 6th players, but doesn't have the archiving of gear and things like that to provide a more newbie friendly experience for larger group sizes. The game still struggles at 5, 6 or more survivors. It's really not designed for that. I enjoy playing with them. They're a nice compromise for a softer game. Okay, on a 4, 5 or 6, a gory melange awaits the settlement. We choose 2 survivors and recover their corpses and belongings. If the scout departed and met a bitter end, their body and belongings are also recovered, and we archive the rest, so we don't lose the pack here. This also there's a special sort of a modifier for results 3 to 6, which is the scout goes at the edge of the battlefield, hiding the bodies and gear as they fall. Afterwards, if the scouts survive the nemesis, so they did logistics of death themselves because they're the last one alive, they lead the recovery team to each cache and the settlement recovers everything. So that's the trick you can do, is you take the scout and you hide them, and then you let the other survivors just do the best they can, and or just go, they're going to die, and then you only lose everything on a 1 or a 2, and then everything else you do a full recovery. 7, 8, 9, 10, utter disdain or smug display. The monster leaves the bodies and their gear intact, and the settlement recovers everything, and our chap wanders away into the darkness with his butt winking at us as he disappears. Again, I love this guy. He's so weird and interesting. We have the long journey home. You roll 1d10. If the scout is dead, there is no scout. Then everything is lost to darkness. So that's a separate table result. We'll go through that first. So if we have to do long journey home because the survivors have been defeated and we've not managed to get the scout going, we roll a dice on this table. On a 1 to 5, all gear and resources belonging to the survivors is lost to the darkness. Archive them all. Really bad, really bad. On a 6+, a naked survivor squirms out from under a corpse and runs home. Archive all gear and resources the survivors had and randomly select a survivor to live. During their reckless run, they disturb something in the darkness. Add the Lamplighter to the settlement event deck. If the Lamplighter is already disturbed and its settlement event is in the deck, there is no chance the naked survivor makes it safely home. They die, and place the Lamplighter settlement event on the top of the settlement event deck. This basically works as a very soft sort of, hey, if you really mess up, you've got like 1 sort of extra quote-unquote life. So you can kind of try and keep going. But we've got the Lamplighter coming, and, when the Lamplighter comes around, it's pretty bad news. That's why I was talking about the image before. I don't know if this guy is the Lamplighter or not, because it kind of looks like the survivor running home disturbing the Lamplighter, but this really doesn't match up with this at all, really. Okay, then we have the big long journey home. Roll a d10, so this is having our scout heading back. On a 1, the monster lasers atop the fallen. The scout is forced to wait for it to move on. Racked with hunger pangs, they only have the noxious fumes from their stinking pack to sustain them. When they finally get back to the settlement, the scout collapses. They suffer the destroyed back, severe body injury, and -1 evasion from their damaged sense of smell. So destroyed back is -2 permanent movement, and you can no longer activate any gear that has +2+ strength. That basically is... The survivor's never been a scout ever again, because they then just have 1 movement, which is unfeasible. And once you can't activate gear with 2+ strength, a lot of the time you're kind of cooked anyway, and you're up for the chopping board as a disposable survivor normally, or at least one who needs to pass on their weapon mastery or whatever their proficiency. Also, the determined scout returns on body and gear, except for anything consumable which they ate to avoid starving. Yeah, it's pretty bad. There's a lot of very good gear that's consumable. Monster grease would just be a starting example, but monster meat would be another. There's bird bread. There's loads of really great ones. On a 2 to 3, while breaking camp, the scout is overcome with curiosity. Peeling back the cloth of their noxious burden reveals a bloated, waxy appendage topped with a chipped yet hardened plate. Disturbed, they cover it quickly. As they carry on, the scout finds one eye drifting uneasily in the Pact's direction always. They suffer -2 accuracy, but they do recover all bodies and gear. Not great. -2 accuracy is usually... A survivor like that can switch to pivoting for being a tank or a support, but given that the scout's role in combat is damage dealing, because that's really all they can do safely, you're not going to be scouting anymore. On a 4-5, the scouts' glassy eyes replay the horrors they witness. The ghastly roll takes its toll. They gain random disorder and permanently fill their brain injury box. They recover all bodies and gear. I will say, I think having the brain injury box permanently filled in is a super cool mechanic. I kind of wish instead of a random disorder they got PTSD, which would have been more thematically appropriate. But yeah, whatever. It's punishment. This table's mostly all punishment. On a 6 or 7, as they trudge uphill, the scout feels a mighty knocking from the ground beneath their feet. It resonates, travelling from the scout's souls to their suddenly terrified brain. They suffer 1d10 brain event damage. If they now have 0 insanity, they also gain a random disorder, but they do recover all bodies and gear. That, again, could be this guy here. But then the question is, why does he appear attached to the Lost in Darkness roll? I don't know. 8-9, passing a field of whispering stone faces, the scout is surrounded by harsh, bitter insults. They suffer 1d5 event brain damage. The indignant scout recovers all bodies and gear and the size and diligently brings back the resources the hunting survivors earned. Unusual to actually get the resources as well. I think that's very cool as a result. It's very interesting. On a 10, a mercifully uneventful journey unfolds. The stalwart scout recovers all bodies, gear, and resources the hunting survivors earned. If there are 10 plus survivors when the scout returns, they are welcomed as a hero and they gain +1 strength, limit once per lifetime. Also, if you've innovated Memento Mori, the innovation, then the scout can also recover 1 irreplaceable gear. It's nice to see that there is a result on here that is positive, or at least neutral. But, you know, this is, as I said, mostly a punishment for failing to win the showdown. And, you know, there we are. Look, we're not losing gear most of the time on this particular roll. We can see that, like, consumable gear is potentially at risk, but otherwise we should be okay as long as we keep the scout safe. So, now we get to look at the outskirts, which is the main and you part of this. And I really hoped I would be doing this in under 30 minutes. That's not happening. Maybe I'll get under an hour. Let's see. There's a lot of reading. Outskirts. So, Extinguished Guidepost. When a survivor dies, their gear does not return to the settlement storage. That's one of the key mechanics we've talked about. Scout. This is nominate the scout and blah blah. We've been through all of that. So, now we've got our pieces of gear. So these all have the scout keyword, and if you look through, you'll see all of them almost all of them use a hollow stone as a part of their crafting recipe. Actually, like less than half of them now that I go back through it. Hollow stones are this. It's a stone resource. It is a strange resource, so you can gather these to pitch for strange resource payments, such as doing Gorm innovations. I think it's Gorm innovations. No, Gorm innovations use. Use organs. There's a thing, I'm forgetting it right now. But there's things that ask for spending strange resources to do stuff, or spend a resource, and so you can collect spares of these to use instead. Okay, we'll start with the Stoneface Cloak. This costs 3 hollow stones and 1 organ. It's probably the first thing you want to put together each time, although it takes you 3 lantern years to gather enough stones. It is a head and body piece of gear because it's a cloak. Armor, so you can't have anything else that's armor keyword in those slots. 2 armor points to head and body. Armor Scout Heavy Stone. At the start of your act, if you're not on terrain, you may hide, and you replace yourself with the Hidden Face terrain tile and place a scout miniature on that card. So we've seen mechanics like this before, where you put your model on the card and you have some of the way that you know where you are on the board. In this case, you've got this tile. You can swap places as an activation, so you're still on the showdown board, but you're, you know, like, you get your turn, so to speak, but you are currently sort of hidden away. If this does get destroyed, you place yourself in a nearest unoccupied space, knock down, and suffer a random sphere injury. This is why I've sort of briefly talked about it. You kind of want to deploy the scout in a corner, really, if you're not planning to attack with them, so they don't get run over. It depends really what the showdown's offering you. If you've got terrain, you might have the scout interact with the terrain and then maneuver somewhere safe and hunker down as a hidden face. Because once they're the terrain tile, they're not a survivor. They're hiding. Excuse the jump. Yep. So that's kind of. I found this very useful, and a little bit of armor protection is quite nice. Okay, notably this isn't a set gear card or anything like that, so we don't have a scout armor set. We do have access to clothed and satiated, but you do need 3 separate pieces of gear in your grid, and when your grid is 4 slots, that's a lot to go. You could go cloak, boots, some other piece of useful arm or waist gear. Often arm has some interesting abilities on it, and then a weapon, but then again, you're giving up a lot of real estate. We'll get into some strategies on how you get around this limitation a little bit further on, near the end of the video, but there's always something to bear in mind. Then we got the Vermin Bellyboots, not rubber boots, Vermin Bellyboots. Armor Scout, 2 armor points to the legs, +1 movement, so movement 4. When the monster has another eligible target, it will always pick them first. So this is an interesting one. It is a little bit awkward to kind of visualize. Essentially, it's telling you that you have to make the monster choose other targets if there's another one that meets the targeting criteria. The place where it is beneficial is if you're dealing with random target, because then you're excluded from the random target as long as there's others that meet the random target criteria. When you're choosing though, if you had a scout 2 spaces away from the monster and your tank was 3 spaces away and it's choosing closest target, well, it only has one closest target as the eligible option. So this ability mostly helps with randomness. The rest of it, you need to be concentrating on your positioning. Did I say that costs perfect hide and vermin? Okay, next up we've got for an iron and a perfect bone, Grimjaw. I've remembered to tab it up so it's a bit bigger on the screen. Grimjaw is a weapon scout melee dagger finesse metal, 3 speed, 5+ accuracy and 4 strength. So very, very competitive, good stats, and this is something you can spend iron on before you get to the blacksmith. It has a right facing red and a down facing blue. If you manage somehow to connect both of those on your scout gear grid, it also gains barbed 6, which is impressive on a 3 speed weapon. That's, each dice has on a 10 adds 6 to your attack. Trying to get these affinities active can prove challenging. During the aftermath, if you wounded the monster at least once, you gain an extra monster resource. Incredible. Love to generate more resources. We don't need a crit on this. Overall, I like this weapon a lot. It is only hampered by being scout gear, locking it only to scouts. If you could have this on any other survivor, it would be such a high pick that I'd be pointing at and going, make this, make this, make this. As it stands, I pretty much want to make this for most scouts, especially because we've got Reaperjaw, which is the pattern. That requires Grimjaw, plus a bone and an extra 2 iron, plus scrap smelting, a perfect organ that isn't used, and a bone club crafted in settlement. Great weapon, the bone club. We love to see it, so that's all fine. And you get to upgrade it into your one little Reaperjaw, which is this down here. It's a seed weapon melee dagger, metal scout other. It's got 3 speed now, 7+ accuracy, 8 strength. It still has the aftermath. If you wounded the monster, gain +1 monster resource. Now it's got an up-facing blue and a right-facing red, and if you have both of those connected and you're carrying Grimjaw, this gains razor sharp and barbed 6. So you craft yourself a Reaperjaw, you craft yourself a second Grimjaw, you can position them like that, and then if you can get 2 more left-facing, well, at least one here, then you get this. There's also there's not really much benefit to having the second weapon in the gear grid, so mostly you're trying to get the razor sharp dice, which is a really good dice, really good dice, better than normal sharp. So you're very encouraged to try and do this, but again, we're now looking at how the slot considerations go, and we absolutely can't put the boots and the cloak in because we need this left facing red to close this out. So that is always sort of something a little tricky about all of this, and that's why, as I said, we're going to talk about some ways that you can even further get around or at least mitigate this gear grid limitation. But both of these weapons are fantastic. I think they are really good crafts. It's nice to have a dedicated dagger user, and that's who my scout will be. If I'm playing with a scout, they will be my dedicated dagger jockey. One unfortunate thing about the red affinity, before we just go on, is it faces right, which means it's the same direction as the Monster Tooth necklace. So we don't have a nice easy slot on Monster Tooth necklace here. We're going to need to find something else. But there are a lot of very decent pieces of gear that we could tie this up with. Actually, give me 1 second. Yeah. So quick jump. Yeah, I was trying to remember. Yes. This is one of the things you can do. White line coat plus white line gauntlets then gives you like a nice little way to have this extra maneuverability, extra strength on the Grimjaw. It's unfortunate you still can't get the set bones for white line, but this is one alternative that I have used previously, and I was reminded of that because I was like, daggers, what's the dagger set? It's white line stuff. Although admittedly, you don't get a full set. The interesting area where this is viable is you are looking to make a dagger user using white line armor, and what you do is you have them rock this for a while until you build the full set, and then you pivot to that. But anyway, that was just something I thought struck me that I was like, this is one thing you can do. It's not the best, but it is an option that I just wanted to briefly mention. And lament that we cannot get the set bonus for white line armor. I'd love that for the Grimjaw. Okay, Scout Lantern. This is 3 broken lanterns. It is an item Scout Lantern Fragile, so fragile means it can break itself. When you return to settlement, draw 2 cards and pick one to keep when drawing random settlement events this lantern year. So this is low-key one of the best items in the game. Choosing 1 from 2 settlement events is massive. It allows you to dodge most of the worst circumstances that could occur. And even if you have 2 really bad cards, you at least get to choose which one is going to impact you. So this is, I think, one of the best pieces of gear, and it's part of the reason why running scouts is so awkward, because we've already seen that, well, we want a weapon and we probably want the cloak and we probably want a pair of boots of some kind, and now we suddenly got a scout lantern and that's 4 slots all used up, and that leaves a lot of difficulty for everything else, which is why I'm going to talk about some other things a bit further down the line. There's not much more else to say except that this is an incredibly good piece of gear and one of the biggest arguments for running the Scout. Next up we have the Disguise Kit here. This costs 1 bone, 1 hollow stone and 1 organ. It's an item Scout Balm soluble. After resolving a hunt event or an encounter in which a survivor died, you dramatically reveal yourself and the scout dies instead of the survivor. It's kind of funny, really, this. You have to have a event or an encounter for the death to occur. I don't think this is great, but I think it gets a lot better when you're playing with other people, because you can then take the role of the scout with a disguise kit. The trouble is, as mentioned, slots are at a premium, and I think at best this is maybe the 7th or 6th most valuable scout gear card, so it's hard to justify it ever. Then we have the Scout Whistle. This costs a hollow stone and a perfect bone and requires heart flute. This required face painting, sorry, I should have said that. A heart flute. is a Scout Instrument Noisy item. At the start of the round, you may roll 1d10 on 3+, gain the priority token, limit once per showdown. This... Okay, so insert noisy warning here, don't bother crafting this. But if you did use it, it doesn't do anything 20% of the time. And also it puts the priority target on your Scout for exactly just one turn, which is thematically interesting, but having a piece of gear like this that occupies a slot and doesn't necessarily do anything, and when it does do something, you need to make sure the Scout is so far away that the monster can't reach them. I just don't really think this is worth your time or effort. You could, if you somehow had the spare, like, perfect bone, somehow maybe you've got like 50 perfect bones or something, because, I don't know, perfect bones are far too valuable to spend on this, but then you could possibly use it in Nemesis showdowns, but I'd never craft this. This is a firm don't bother. Then we've got Healing Salve, a Hunting Salve, sorry. Item Scout soluble. After revealing a hunt card, you may archive this to skip it. Thus, if it was like discarded to settlement storage, maybe, but the fact that this is 25% of your gear cards means you don't want to have something to discard it. And the hunt event card I would want to skip is a basic hunt event card, and I only want to skip it because it might result in the harvester. So ultimately I don't see much point in this one. Generally you don't know what the hunt event card's results are going to be. You don't get to skip it once you've seen what the results are. So I think this is very not worth it at all. Bloodp Pack, Item Scout Fragile, costs 1 hide and 1 perfect organ. During the aftermath, if another survivor died from bleeding tokens, archive this and roll 1d10. On a 7+, they live. You might want this in certain showdowns. The Butcher and other bleed-heavy monsters, you could justify it. The fact that it doesn't archive itself unless a survivor dies is okay-ish, but ultimately you're giving up a slot and a perfect perfect organ to get something that only works 40% of the time. And you know what? Like, why would I want a Bloodp Pack when I can have this from the Smog Singers, which saves the survivor from dying from bleeding tokens during the showdown and removes 3 bleeding tokens. And sure, I have to be playing Smog Singers in specific for that, but you can just see this is way cheaper than this. And this is even a weapon and has an affinity and does stuff otherwise. And reach isn't bad on Scouts. So ultimately, this is one of these cards I think needs to go back to the drawing board. At a minimum, put some affinities on it. Like, give us a bunch of red affinities. Give us that left-facing red affinity on there, so we could look at it and go, "Oh, maybe I want to put it next to my Grimjaw or my Reaperjaw." And that would softly encourage us maybe to use it because it's doing something even if it doesn't save a life. So ultimately this is too expensive, it's too situational. It can archive itself and not even do anything. That's all undesirable stuff. So keep it in the box, just like I'm putting the Spear of Life back in there now. Yeah, that's all the normal gear. So here we have the Scout Hunt event card. This goes into the Scout Basic, the basic hunt deck, and replaces one of the normal basic hunts. And it's a roll 1d10 on the Scout Hunt event table, but if the Scout has died on the hunt, then you'll draw a different hunt card to replace it. So it has this table here in the book, which we'll zoom in on now. It's got just 10 different events, but given that the Scout Hunt event card is just one of like 13 cards in the deck, it's less often than you'd think. Right, we'll walk through these. We have, first of all, Reconnaissance. The Scout picks their way up a steep embankment. They spy their quarry out in the distance. If the Scout has 1+ accuracy, their keen eyes spot an advantage. Ichor flies feast on this enfeebled quarry's droppings. At the start of the showdown, reveal hit locations and put the first persistent injury revealed into play, and then shuffle the hit location deck. So it makes the monster a bit weaker. got past that word salad there. Otherwise, the scout investigates. You roll 1d10 and you add +1 if you have the Stone-Faced Cloak gear card, which I generally recommend you have. On a 1 to 3, you've alerted the quarry. It moves 1 space away on the hunt board. Ick. On a 4 to 8, expert tracking, it moves 1 space closer. Nice. On a 9+, you find a shortcut to a quarry. You find a shortcut to catch the quarry flat-footed. Skip the next hunt space. If this starts the showdown, the survivors ambush the monster. Very simple and straightforward. I really like the bonus persistent injury, and that is quite a fun one. Our roll of a 2 is warning. Breaking ahead, the scout approaches the outcropping. As they near, their blood runs cold as the heartbreaking scene becomes clear. A mass of mangled survivors' bodies fused in horrifying configurations lie discarded in the scout's path. This is unbearable. The scout suffers 2 brain event damage. The scout must choose to either divert the group's path or pass through the grisly scene. If they divert, you roll a random hunt event. If they pass through, all survivors suffer 2 brain event damage and the scout gains a random disorder shouldering the weight of their collective trauma. It's interesting to try and speculate what maybe mangled them and fused them together. That's a little unusual. It could well be a harvester, it could well be a flesh pillar, it could be a king, we don't know, but it's just kind of, this is mostly an event that does a little bit of world building. Generally, I'd rather pass through this rather than roll the random hunt event, because the known penalty is, for me, cheaper than the potential ones. Roll of a 3 is Outrider. The scout outpaces the hunting party, reaching a field overgrown with rhythmically waving acanthus. As they step into the brambles, they discover the source of the steady movement. Ponderously chewing stone mouths assault their feet, suffer 1 event damage to the leg's hit location. If the scout is wearing the Vermin Bellyboots, which we've looked at, the masticating maws spit with disgust and stop biting. Walking unmolested through their field, they find a forlorn object they recognise all too well. You gain a white charcoal, which is one of the ways you can have a backup pack, which is this lovely card here. If the scout has a dagger or a sickle, they're able to deftly cut some useful herbs during their escape. They gain a fresh acanthus. If the scout returns with anything, the hunting party showers him with praise, and the scout beams with pride and gains the Outrider ability. So this is part of why I tend to think of Vermin Bellyboots and the Grimjaw as being a default part of the scout's gear, because they tie into this result. Outrider, you can see ahead. When you're the scout, you may add +2 to any roll result during a hunt event, limited once per hunt phase. Just a nice little small extra bonus ability. 4. Missed opportunity. The scout finds evidence of 2 intriguing possibilities. Diverting from their quarry's tail, if they veer into the gaping nostril of a nose-shaped cave, they may find a runt negligible but easy to slaughter. If they climb down the lush, studded cliffs of Stone Eyes, they may track a powerful alpha creature ripe with resources. The scout excitedly lays out the hunting party's alternatives. The others grumble, resigned to face their fate against the quarry they had chosen. The scout stews, restless and embittered, while the others rest, preparing to continue on their execrable task. All survivors gain +2 survival from the moment of reprieve. The scout gains +1 in understanding, learning to balance their ambitions with the needs of the settlement. So this is similar to the one where the survivors have the choice, but instead there is no choice here. The survivors are going to go on against the one that they were hunting anyway, rather than the other options. Subterranean route, number 5. The way ahead is blocked by an immense bone storm, but the scout finds a cave to shelter in. The survivors may choose to wait out the storm and roll a random hunt event. Otherwise, the scout leads the others through a subterranean tunnel inside the cave. You roll 1d10. On a 1, the path behind is suddenly crowded with bone maggots, wriggling over one another in their constructed exoskeletons. The tunnel walls quake as the mass surges forwards. The survivors rush ahead, but the scout is hampered, struggling against their suddenly squirming pack. The hunting survivors barely glimpse the scout disappearing beneath collapsing rock, dead. Absolutely sucks. Don't go on this one if you don't have a lifetime reroll for your scout, because 10% chance of this result is terrible. Lifetime reroll reduces that to a 1% chance. That's as good a risk as we can take most of the time. Otherworldly luck, the fighting art from the Flower Knight, if you are playing without Arc Survivors, is another option to help mitigate this because it'll give you +1 on this roll. You could also be an Outrider. That would help you get around this. 2 to 6. The survivors push through a narrow space in the tunnel. The walls are lined with conch-shaped ears that bristle with humming crystals. The noise and sharp edges are painful. Each survivor is scuffed and scratched and suffers 1 event damage to a random hit location. They also suffer 1 brain event damage unless they are hushed, which is a mechanic that's including the Gambler's Chest. I'm not going to go through here. 7 to 8. The path leads to an opening teeming with bioluminescent fauna. On each survivor for 1d10. On a 7+, they gain a random vermin resource. Amazing, love that. And a 9+, the survivors tumble out of the tunnel to find themselves in a luminous crystal cavern. They rest while the scout explores. Mineral gathering. The scout starts in the crystal lake and must roll. The hunting survivors staying back each gain +1 survival. So this is my preference, to do subterranean route with a lifetime reroll or with a way of avoiding that 1 result. Because mineral gathering gives us the chance of hitting crystal skin because we're in the lake. That's amazing for scouts. That's something I'm looking for. We'll take a little look at crystal skin and scouts in the wrap-up. Number 6 is a found message. The scout discovers a message from another scout scratched into the curling lip of a giant stone face. It points to 2 branching paths, each leading to a monster with a distinct disposition. One a dominant specimen, the other a wounded outcast. The scout decides which to hunt. So, the dominant specimen gives it +1 damage token at the start. If the survivors are victorious, they draw an additional 1 monster resource. Wounded outcast, at the start of the showdown, the monster suffers 2 wounds. If you are in a powerful position, if you have a lot of evasion and defences and ways of ignoring monster damage, take your dominant specimen. Otherwise, wounded outcast is great. Like, 1 extra resource, 1 extra monster resource is not that valuable in the long scheme of things if you're not going to make it through the showdown, especially because you're dealing with the scout. So chunking 2 wounds off the monster, that's my pick pretty much every time. Because I'm not messing around. I came here to slay these monsters when I'm playing with the scout. I'm not. I don't want more risk. 7. Stirring Burden. The dreaded pack begins to stir. The scout tries in vain to keep it closed, but with every trudging step it wriggles farther from the folds of cloth, emitting a horrible stench. Each survivor gains +2 insanity. The faraway quarry picks up the scent and instinctively retreats from the rancid presence. Move the quarry space 2 spaces away from the survivors. At the start of the showdown, the monster gains a -1 damage token. This is an okay trade. Obviously, if you hit a starvation, that's not great. And may cost you, not guaranteed, but may cost you. -1 damage tokens are a pretty good trade, although of course monsters are always capped to a minimum of 1 damage. Number 8 is the Strange Water. The survivors find an ancient stone reservoir. A small stream of cloudy water pours in from above and slowly drains through a hole in the bottom. The hunting party coerces the scout to test the water. The scout reluctantly investigates and rolls 1d10. On a 1, the system is part of nature's sewage system. Its walls are caked in well-fermented fecal matter. As you double over, dry heaving, a putrid tentacle snatches you by the hair and pulls you through the aperture. You thrash and retch, fighting your way out. You emerge sallow and hairless. The light faded from your eyes. You gain the dead inside impairment. Dead inside is you can't spend survival. If I remember correctly, let's get that absolutely for certain by going on the glossary. Dead inside. Survivors who are dead inside cannot gain survival. So, you can spend it, but you can't gain it anymore. You've got a finite survival left. 2 to 4, refreshing. You eagerly drink and encourage the others to do so. As you depart from the reservoir, the hunting party is stricken with ravenous hunger. Each survivor archives all consumable gear. Not ideal. 5 to 9, you take a sip and then several big gulps. The water is delicious, but you spitefully omit this, loudly declaring the water sour and acrid. You gain survival up to the settlement survival limit and heal all injury levels. It's a bonus for the scout, it's fine. 10+, delicious. You uncover all the others to imbibe. All survivors gain survival up to the settlement's survival limit and heal injury levels. So we're kind of seeing having bonuses on these tables is like really desirable. So stuff that can increase our rolls on the hunt tables, fantastic. Investigation bonuses, all of that stuff. Number 9 is exhaustion. The journey stretches on monotonously. An occasional twitch reminds the scout of their burden. Their soldiers chafe and their spirits sag. If the scout has 2+ strength, they rush ahead, blazing the trail despite their burden, skip the next hunt space on the board. If this movement starts to show down, the survivors ambush the monster. Otherwise, the scout is not strong enough to continue bearing this load. They switch gear grids with a random survivor. That survivor is unprepared for the dread Pact's tormenting presence and gains a random disorder. Make sure your scouts have 2+ strength. And then this just doesn't. This is just a bonus. Don't. Like, once you've got the options, always take a scout with 2 strength. Finally, number 10, we have Irresistible Temptation. In the mouth of the massive stone face, a glorious prize catches the eye of the scout. A shimmering blade from a long-forgotten settlement with smithing prowess beyond the scout's comprehension. If the scout has 2+ speed, they grab it. Gain 1 oxidized lantern sword, exhausted lantern horde gear. That's very good. Otherwise, the stone will snap shut, trapping the scout's greedy appendage, and you roll 1d10. 1 to 2, the jaws snap around the scout's head. They struggle to escape, but it's futile. The survivors look on in horror as their companion's head is severed, and the scout suffers the head explosion, severe injury. Yeah, you don't want your scout dying on the hunt. There's not a lot you can do to control this. 2+ speed or +5 is not common. If you've got it, maybe you should have the scout have that extra speed, especially I quite like the daggers with the extra speed, so it works. On a 3+, the ground down teeth gnash on the scout's struggling limb. They suffer the dismembered arm's severe injury. Not so bad if you're running fist and tooth or daggers. These daggers are both one-handed. So, to summarise what we've got here that we want to pay attention to try and help if we can. We want extra accuracy on our scout. We want to wear the Vermin Bellyboots. We want a dagger or a sickle, but preferably a dagger. We want... Oops, where'd it go? We want to... it's this one? No. Yeah, we want 2+ strength, and 2+ speed. So, because I lost track of where I was, just to quickly run back through that. +1 accuracy, Vermin Bellyboots, dagger or tool, sickle, +2 strength, +2 speed is our ideal scout. And that's who we want to pick. That's who we want this chap to be. We want him to be buff, keen-eyed, fast, and wearing squeaky boots. Ideal. That's your ideal scout man there. Yeah? This is it. Okay, on to the next section. Scout discoveries. A very cool system. You get your pictograph, which we know we can tutor, get it more easily by a direct special innovate. I explained this already, so first time a level 3+ quarry is defeated by the survivors, accompanied by a scout, you gain the scout discovery for that monster. It adds pictograph, consequences as normal. And also we get these, which are on each of the cards. I was like looking for the text then. I was like, well, where is it? I know it's printed on a card, but yeah, we gain them here. So let's go through these. I don't know how much detail I'm going to read through these. We'll see. This video is getting long again, as always. They're a bit small. I'm going to have to do each one separately, so we'll tab them and then draw and discard. So, White Lion's Collection. This has the purposely hollowed out tree. Inside they find a carefully arranged cache of rotting body parts, broken lanterns and crude braids of hair. They're repulsed by the gore, but the scout is further troubled. These trifles are not food, could the moths be sentimental? So this is kind of a reference to the story of the White Lion and how they collect trinkets. We know they do that in the defeat. Also the artwork has a white lion by a tree petting a survivor. So it ties all back in together, building on that story of white lions and their love of trinkets and things, and their lost previous civilization. Right, so 1 to 2 sends a massive blue-eyed crab scrambling. They are a satisfying snack and you gain +1 endeavour when you return. Not great, but whatever. It's an endeavour. Endeavour's really useful. 3 to 5, you fight through the smell, you find a few bits fresh enough to harvest and add monster level skull basic resources to settlement storage. Usually that will be 3. It could possibly be more if your first level 3 plus monster was actually a legendary. They can be higher than level 3. On a 6 to 7, a scout finds a catatonic survivor with long ragged hair. Their scalp is crisscrossed with fresh and old claw marks, gain +1 population. The new survivor cannot encourage. Record this on their record sheet. So that is the survivor who is hadn't had their hair like petted over and over by a white lion who has kept them there, which is on the White Lion showdown page and in the introductory sort of text. Lore text, so that's really neat to actually see this in practice and where the folklore came from. On an 8+, a scout notices several large handprints in feces. They look remarkably like their own magnified. The scout gains a random disorder. Hurrying away, they slip in excrement. They slip in exciting excrement, tripping over their treasure and find a random rare gear. Generating a random rare gear outside of having some kind of electronic assistance is a nightmare, and it's a nightmare even on the simulator table, in the KDM simulator I should say, because not all the rare gear is jammed together. It's a really cool idea, but this is one of those ones where it feels like Kingdom Death sometimes is designed as if it was a video game, which makes sense given Adam's background in programming. But this is, can we have we can't even have like a random gear generating page on the website, on the Kingdom Death website for us, because there's loads and loads of promo gear that counts as rare gear. It's a really sweet idea, this. It's wild what you could possibly get. You can find stuff you'd never see before. That's really cool. But it is a lot. It's a hard one to figure out. Especially, I keep all my rare gear alphabetized because it makes it easiest for me to flick through it all and grab the right thing. Having to shuffle this all up and randomize it is a nightmare, and I couldn't even do it on a normal D100 table. It's yeah. I know, it's kind of almost like complaining about an embarrassment of riches. Next we have, the Staircase of Blood. In the sudden silence, the scout follows the sound of a heavy dripping. Dread fills the survivors as they approach a staircase of clotted blood, spiraling up into the darkness. Start the terrifying ascent, and we roll a d10. Really like the artwork here. It is kind of suggested that this is not just a metaphorical depiction of what's going on, that this really is, there's a gigantic crimson crocodile up there that is that has made this spiral staircase. Is sort of one of the ways and suggestions to think about it, which would make sense. Crimson crocodiles have a lot of control over blood, their own blood, in respect to what they can do with it. So it's not a firm. I think it's definitely this. It could be more symbolic, but as we'll see when we go through the results, there's definitely some sort of physical reference. So I like the idea that there is a giant, super big crimson crocodile that occasionally lures in survivors with this staircase. On a 1 to 2, as they take the 9th step, the scout steps in a teeming nest of hissing cockroaches. All survivors suffer 1 arms event damage as they fall and scramble away. Mentally broken, they each gain a random disorder and you add 1d5 hissing cockroach vermin resource to settlement storage. The arm damage is almost irrelevant because this is happening after you've defeated the monster. So event damage, then you're going home. So it probably should have just been 1 arm event damage to have a risk of somebody breaking an arm or something. It's almost irrelevant. And getting 1d5 hissing cockroaches is nice for cooking, especially now we're getting the recipe cards in physical, which are adding more recipe options. That's really cool. So it's not bad. On a 3 to 6, the survivor stops at the 21st step. Slick rivulets of blood gently lift their feet, guiding them down. Wisely relenting to the gentle nudge, the group turns back. Each survivor may remove a disorder of their choice. 21 does seem to be a number linked to the Crimson Crocodile with the 21,000 Newton bite. So that's that. I honestly couldn't be bothered to try and figure out what the significance of 21 would be here in respect to the crocodiles. Maybe it's a reference to 21 guns, you know, who knows. A 7+, at an uncomfortable height, the stairwell forks, revealing a unique set of stairs for each survivor. The group divides and continues their ascent. High above the ground, there is only darkness and the faint footsteps of the fellow survivors. Each survivor rolls 1d10. On a 1, they are eaten by a crimson crocodile lurking in the sky. That's why I think there is a big crimson crocodile up there. But it could be that there are actually small crimson crocodiles, normal-sized ones, I should say, lurking around on this spiral staircase network. Maybe. We don't know. It's another set of questions I'd really love to get some answers about. Otherwise, they gain plus 1 permanent strength, and choose a survivor. They gain Hostox, the gloaming rare gear found embedded in their path. Hostox is like one of those weapons I really love. So it is a weapon axe, two-handed other. 9 speed, 9 strength, 9+ accuracy, is like a really fun stat profile. It's got deadly, savage, sentient, and sharp. So its strength is 9 plus 1d10. So an average of like 14.5. Or if you want another way, generally your wounding roll on average is going to be a 20. At the end of the round, if you've not wounded the monster with this, it drains your blood, gain 5 bleeding tokens and suffer bash. 5 bleeding tokens kills most survivors, but not all. This weapon is also very likely to wound a lot of the time. I think it is super cool. This is like a weapon with massive upsides and risks and challenges. It's really well designed for people who just want to roll a bucket load of dice. I like this so much that I will, when playing with friends where I'm more lax and loose with the rules, I'll just chuck the scout discoveries in as a treat for people the first time they beat a level 3 monster. I know, I haven't really figured out what we do with the tablet, so just kind of like ignore that, but I let them have this card bit. Mostly it's because I just want like Hostox to turn up, and then I'll be like, can I use this? Because I don't normally get to roll like 9 dice to attack with, and it's kind of fun. You know, especially with such a terrible accuracy rate. I kind of just really like this weapon. Is cool. Okay, Frog Dog. Covering this in here for sake of completeness. You get the Frog Dog tablet scout gear. Scout follows murky liquid draining from the struggle and finds a preserved dog pole twisted in the metamorphic flux. Roll 1d10. If the settlement has celebrated a metamorphosis festival, I'm not going to cover that here. The scout knows the horrors and adds +2 to their roll. Otherwise, they witness an omen. An omen is a mechanic that Frog Dog expansion cares about. Roll a dice, so 1 to 2, perceiving the preservative powers of the muddy water. You scoop handfuls of grimy slit into your mouth and consume. You immediately regret this, causing hormonal residue snuffs out your inner lantern, dead. If you cannot consume, you dunk your head in the water, your skin tightens around your straining muscles, gain +2 strength and +1 luck. So we get a little thing here of, if you're going to take a scout out for the first time hunting the level 3 Frog Dog, pick one who can't consume, if you have the option. On a 3 to 5, perceiving the utility beneath the strangeness, you tear away the waxy flesh and gain 2 random monster resources and a perfect bone. On a 6 to 7, perceiving the artful preservation of life in death, you cradle the coal mass and kiss the hair pustules of its emerging crest. Your body reverts to its physical peak and you become ageless. Ageless is a great ability. It's gotten harder to get as time has passed forwards, especially with the understanding loops mostly being shut down. But I'm always happy whenever I get it. On an 8+, perceiving the irresistible paradox of eternal flux, you gladly accept the treasure. You bring the carcass home profoundly aware of its magnetic charm, and you gain the preserved dog pole rare gear, which is this little cutie. Item heavy, stinky consumable, up green, right green, down blue, left blue, great affinities, really fun core gear, core being it sits in the middle of your gear grid if you wanted to. You can archive this, why would you, to throw the dog pole, place the preserved dog pole terrain tile up to 5 spaces away from you. The preserved dog pole is this tile here, so 1 space tile. If the monster would draw AI, instead move the monster until it's adjacent to this terrain, then archive this terrain tile and this card. So it basically neuters and blanks one monster's turn. The place you'd use that is sort of in these life and death, do or die situations. For the most part, the preserved dog pole is just a stinky consumable with a lot of interesting affinities. You know, and you've got to give it a little name as well when you've got it. I'm not going to tell you what name you should give your preserved dog pole. That's really your choice, but you do have to name it when you get it. I don't make the rules. I just repeat them from wherever they came from. Okay, Rock Eater, sorry. The Rockbite. Is the Rockbiter the guy from Netherend's story? It doesn't matter. Rock Eater. Scout Discovery Screaming Antelope. You gain the Screaming Antelope Scout Tablet Scout gear. Brushing aside the crushed undergrowth on the battlefield exposes deep slashes in the stone-faced ground. Careful examination reveals they are tooth marks of the monster's undermaw. Roll d10. I need to take a drink before I carry on with this. On a 1 to 2, the scout finds crushed herbs stinking of the Screaming Antelope's putrid breath. Perhaps the monster chewed the rock to pick its teeth, and you gain 1 fresh Acanthus strange resource. It's fine. It's not great. It's pretty bad, actually. Now I'm thinking about it. You get a lot of fresh Acanthus anyway. More fresh Acanthus isn't something you'll complain about, but it could be better. 3 to 5, the scout lowers themselves into the cavity and stares blankly into the dark, imagining what it might be like to eat them alive, and you gain plus 20 insanity. Interesting, morbid, cool, kind of just a little character building moment. 6 to 7, the scout notes that the monster's female reproductive organs are nestled around a second heart inside the undermaw. If there are at least 3 survivors to help the scout, they pry open the undermaw and gain a second heart strange resource. If not, they fail. The second heart's okay as strange resources go. It's hard to get. It gives you speed powder, if I remember correctly, which is an interesting gear card you don't often get to play with. So that's nice. But, you know, it's not anything super exciting. You can get it as well, a second heart as well from Crush and Devour. A+, noting the angle at which the monster's teeth easily crush stone, the scout devises a technique based on how the undermaw unhinges from both flanks. They gain the following ability. Stone Crusher. Before making a wound attempt with fist and tooth, you may discard another drawn hit location to double the wound result. So this gives us an interesting little wrinkle, which is our scout against the first level 3 Screaming Antelope survivor we take should either be our fist and tooth trainer or somebody who is going to train up fist and tooth or use it. So that is just something to hold in mind, because 8, 9, 10, 30% of the time they'll get a very useful little ability that you can't get anywhere else. Now we've got the Crystal Fire Pit, which comes from the level 3 Smog Singers. Gain the Smog Singers Tablet Scout Gear. A fragrant smell leaves the scouts to a smoking patch of broken stone faces and debris. Heat radiates from below. The survivors dig carefully, exposing a shining pit filled with tasty-looking charred vegetables. The sizzle in the shimmering heat, and you roll 1d10. On a 1 to 2, eating the perfectly roasted vegetables fills the survivors with a sense of peace and joy. Remove all disorders from each survivor. On a 3 to 5, between the hot crystal embers, the scout finds a pepper. Gazing at it cross-eyed renders it invisible. Gain the Ghost Pepper strange resource. We'll look at that in a moment. 6 to 7, the group sits, eats and laughs. Eat, love, laugh. Their worries melt away. For a moment they experience the life of the tender-hearted singers. Their hearts swell with compassion. You remove Smog Singers from the quarry list and Murder from the Settlement event deck. So this one is actually kind of really a punishment if you are playing with Ark Survivors and haven't already unlocked Homicidalism. Otherwise, it's just really quite good, although you will lose the ability to get any more Smogsinger Indomitable resources once this happens. And then on 8+, the survivors eat more than their fill. Collapsed in bloated repose, they happily burp and giggle. They find a curious item left by Smogsinger and name it appropriately. Gain the belching bagpipe rare gear, which is this. I talked about it in the Smogsinger video, so I'm not going to go into it in a lot of detail here. It's a weapon instrument noisy other with 2 speed, 7+ accuracy and 9 strength, range 5. That's always interesting. I don't think I talked about that. This is not a melee or ranged category weapon. It's just an instrument. That's kind of unusual, because technically I think it's a ranged weapon. And it has Ballad of Pride. If you archive 9 wounds, then the survivors laugh, feeling omnipotent, and it all gain undeathable. Not a bad thing to spend an activation on, but once the monster's lost like 9 wounds, usually you're close to victory, and Ballards don't work very well against life monsters. Now we've got... this one's a headache, okay? Nest of Beards. You gain the Phoenix Tablet Scout gear. Climbing the giant nightmare tree, the Scout discovers a nest. Instead of eggs, they find a mass of hoary whiskers. A brood of shriveled ancient phoenixes sit with their long beards tangled together. They look at the Scout helplessly, and you roll 1d10. On 1 to 2, try as they might to escape, their fates are as tight as their beards. The survivors share the meal, chewing the gristly aged flesh and spitting out the hollow bones. One by one, the survivor's skin starts to glow with an unnatural pallor, and their hair darkens. They can no longer gain hunt XP. So this is a variant of Ageless, but effectively time locks them, so they can't learn anything new. It is definitely worse than Ageless. Ageless gives you the option, and it's become more important to age up your survivors than ever when you're dealing with philosophies, but it's still interesting. Then we have the 3 to 5 result. The Scout finds a poorly digested monster's corpse in the nest. Gain 2 random resources from a random quarry monster in your campaign. A bit easier to handle than the random rare gear. So I don't have any complaints, or a little tangent there. On a 6 to 7, the Scout recognises one of the little birds. They may choose to kill it. If they do, reset the campaign to the departure of this lantern year. Otherwise, the Scout gains +3 insanity, reckoning more of what they saw. I'm going to put a pin in this one and come back to it. On an 8+, the Scout reaches into the nest, producing a hand teeming with blind black grubs. Sharp beaks eagerly snap at the proffered hand. The Scout's blood pours into their maws, along with the grubs. Suddenly, the Scout hears voices singing in their blood. They gain +8 understanding, usually triggering White Secret for them, and giving them access to potentially Ageless. So, that's all of that. Now, let's get back to this 6 to 7 result. I have been delaying talking about this. I'm not going to get into a large amount of detail with it here, but I'm going to posit to you a question. And the Phoenix seems to break time in a bunch of different ways. Now, what we have here is the Scout recognises one of the little birds, and if they kill it, you reset the campaign to the departure. So the Scout looks at that and goes, that little bird there, that's the Phoenix we just fought, but as a baby. And if you kill it, then we didn't fight that Phoenix, so we wind back time and redo the hunt to hunt a different Phoenix, because the Phoenix we originally fought never existed in the first place. Right, from the survivor's point of view, that at least makes some sense. When we start considering it from the Phoenix's point of view, we get into a whole chicken and the egg situation, and there are some massive questions about this. So we're going to come back to this card when I cover the Dark Bestiary entry for the Phoenix, and expect me to start metaphorically, figuratively pointing at a board like what's his name was It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, or like Prof Brown, in Back to the Future, because I got problems with how the Phoenixes behave in regards to time, because they just can't pick one way to act. Regardless, it's at least interesting as a concept, but now we know that Phoenixes can be born after they existed. Who knows? Does that mean a single Phoenix exists simultaneously at all points of its own lifespan at the same time? Because it can slide up and down its own lifespan? Do Phoenixes age in reverse? I don't know, I'm starting to get into this. I'm not going to. I've not allotted time for that. On to the King's Last Meal. So, the scout observes a gleam of metal in the distance. They follow the trail. Twisted scraps of splendid armour litter the path, while shreds of regal plumes drift on the stale breeze. They arrive at the gorse-strewn field filled with the familiar trappings of settlement life. Roll 1d10. On a 1 to 7, the scout treads through the devoured settlement. Underfoot, the shreds of otherworldly fabric lay in ruins. Scavenging, they shift the scraps with their feet as they pass. The scout inadvertently disturbs dark spores that spread through the gloom of their surrounding. On their feet, the spores spur rapidly mutating growths. The scout stumbles and looks in horror as their feet burst from the coverings, emerging as wide stone plinths traced with delicate etchings. Archive your leg armour, gain +2 movement and suffer -2 evasion. Add 2 more light injury boxes that heal only at the start of a showdown with a king. You're probably only fighting kings at this point apart from nemesis monsters, so you're almost certainly going to have access to these light injury boxes, and you can engineer it to make sure that you have them fully healed before you go into the finale. It's also really cool and interesting. I'll comment a bit more on this all in a second. On an 8+, the terrain shifts and rumbles, strange ornate spires erupt from the ground, and hovels sink hissing into pools of green acid. The scout explores the rubble, following thrilling cries and muffled screams. Shifting the rubble, they collect the trembling leftovers. Roll 1d10, gain that much population. If the result was 6+, the survivors bring new priorities of settlement, and you gain a second conviction principle if you already have one. Super cool to get both convictions. I really like that. That's romantic and barbaric, which usually means that you're gaining barbaric because you should have already picked romantic, because romantic is the right choice always. Normal romantic improves your fighting art draws. Arc Survivor Romantic has a philosophy attached to it. So until we get a barbaric philosophy, and I think every single principle in the game should have its own philosophy added to it, because that would be super cool. Basically, this is gain barbaric. Barbaric's alright as a principle goes, it's not as good as the other one. So the really interesting parts of this, which I think are worth mentioning, and I can't really pull up and enlarge all of the details in the artwork either, but I totally recommend you have a look at this if you own the card. We see a king eat a whole settlement, and it's eaten like almost indiscriminately, because it's gone straight through the Kingsmen as well. So the Kingsmen that led it here, set the guidepost, have been launched down also. The king is still something I haven't put together all of my thoughts and opinions on in regards to its place in the lore. It feels less than it was pitched to be, but also there feels like there's a lot of gaps in the knowledge. I just kind of, mostly this is like, hey, we now see what kings do. They turn up and led by Kingsmen and just nom 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 eat up an entire settlement as fuel. But there's this like the dark spores, which appears to be a part of the whole way the king like generates terrain. And the question I'd have there is, are these dark spores the black lichen? I don't know. I haven't put that together yet. We'll see. But regardless, I like this one so much on a story building kind of front. It is really cool. It's really unique. It's sweet to get stuff like the ghost pepper, which I forgot to mention. It gives you second stomach, which basically when you consume something 40% of the time, it comes out the other end intact and you don't archive it. That's really cool to have consumables on a particular survivor they like keep. That's Smog Singers. just realised that. But anyway, get back to the king, because I'm scattered everywhere. I love this from a world building perspective. I like it even more than the Phoenix one. I'm angry at the Phoenix one for reasons I'll get into in the Phoenix video. But from world building perspective, when you just kind of look at it, and it's like, this is really cool. And this artwork is lights out. I love the framing of it, the light, the whole thing is just brilliant. It's brilliant composition. Okay, we have got left the Lamplighter and the tablets. So let's push through. I guess this is going to be an hour and a half long video. I thought I could do this in 30 minutes. Why did I think that? Right, tablets. So each one of these is gifted to you as a part of the Scout Discovery cards, as we saw. I think I'm going to individually put them out as well, same as I just did, because they're a bit clearer on the screen. Okay, so first of all of them have the same keywords, which is item, scout, heavy, stone, and tablet. For the moment, scout, we know that locks it onto the scout grid only. Heavy, we know that's negative. And stone and tablet don't really have any specific things yet. The white line tablet. The white line has incredible hearing that can be used to your advantage. All survivors can use the distracted cat survival action. So this is really cool because your scout gets access to this, and they're great at doing survival actions, because why not? They're not really doing a lot else at times. So when a white line would grab another survivor, you spend one survivor to distract it and roll 1d10 on a 6+, place the survivor in the monster's blind spot instead. Like, just a nice little quality of life thing. It gets better against the white Giga Lion, which is harder to avoid the grabs on, and more important to do so. Yeah, it's okay. Like, also, it's better on the White Lion and the Phoenix and the Antelope, because you do have the level 4 legendaries you might be going after, so this has a bit more longer lifespan. The Crimson Crocodile tablet. The monster's scales are vulnerable as it twists its neck. All survivors can use the Enchanted Reflection survival action. Enchanted Reflection. If adjacent to the Crimson Crocodile, spend one survivor before you attack to illuminate its scales. During that attack, you can always reach the right spot on a coagulated hit location. This is overkill, really. Like, very rarely can you not get to the coagulated. And I'm actually usually okay even delaying things if I have to, but the Crimson Crocodile is a monster that puts you very much on a clock, so if you're in a tight situation because of death count or similar, then this does have benefits. You know, it's a edge case ability, but it could still save a showdown. Okay, let's get rid of that, and on to the Frog Dog tablet. The Frog Dog's hind legs betray its hopping pattern. All survivors can use the Leaping Lure survival action. Leaping Lure. When the Frog Dog leaps, spend one survivor to attract it so it lands on the mammoth leaf closest to you. This is really good. One of the big sort of terrain benefits of fighting the Frog Dog is the mammoth leaves, because if you can stand on those, you get a lot of extra strength and maneuverability when you bounce off it. But the Frog Dog often jumps onto them, and it's semi-random where it's going to land. If it lands on your survivors, that kind of sucks. So this allows you to just ensure that never happens, and you can have the Frog Dog bouncing to the mammoth leaf nearest to your tank survivor. It will have to bounce around still. It still is leaping, but yeah, this gives you so much control over where it's going or its positioning is. Screaming Antelope tablet. The Screaming Antelope has many broken and chipped teeth. All survivors can use the Tooth Picker survival action. Tooth Picker. Before you attack the Screaming Antelope, spend one survivor to aim for the monster's broken teeth. If, during a reaction, that attack would archive a survivor's weapon, ignore it. This one isn't great, because you need to also be controlling the monster's hit locations to know that it's going to try and eat your weapon. Technically, there may be situations where you're like, okay, I really should do this just in case it would eat my weapon. But spending a survival beforehand is rarely worth it unless you know for sure it's going to happen or you think it's very likely. So this tablet, I think, is sort of, yeah, maybe if it revealed the location or something, I don't know, that it needs a little more juice for me to want to take this one out. Smogsinger's Tablet. Creating this tablet has filled you with pure malice towards the Smogsingers. All survivors can use the Hated Ones survival action. Hated Ones. After resolving the last hit location of attack, spend 1 survival to strike the Smogsingers. The attacked monster suffers a knockback 1 you may then pursue, which allows you to move after it and gain and draw another hit location card. So basically, it gives you 1 survival for 1 extra hit location roll in an attack, which is okay. Now, not as good as a whole extra attack, but it can be used on top of a surge. Phoenix Tablet. The Phoenix cannot predict the future from timelines that do not yet exist. All survivors can use the Unforeseen Strike survival action. Unforeseen Strike. Before you attack the Phoenix, spend 1 survival. For this attack, draw all hit locations face down, revealing them only as you resolve each one, and you get to ignore Rewind for this attack. This one's really cool. I like how this one works mechanically. I think the design on it is impeccable. I got massive praise for it. Essentially, you get such a cool experience where you now draw the hit locations face down, and that can include the trap in there, and you don't need to worry about it because it's not revealed yet. So you then, turn them up one at a time and resolve them one at a time. And Rewind doesn't trigger. Rewind's such a mess. Like, it really screws with your attacks and reduces the amount of damage you can put in. You get to ignore that. This I love. I think it is so really cool, and it fits in really well with everything the Phoenix is doing. And it also kind of feels like another JoJo reference baked into the whole thing. The Phoenix does feel quite JoJo coded at times. So I really like this one. And then we look at the last one, which is King Tablet. The King creates energy from sound, perhaps silences a shield. All survivors can use the Silent Rebellion survival action. Silent Rebellion. Before spending an action against the King, spend 1 survival to hold your breath and focus on the void. You are hushed during that action. Being hushed is very helpful against the King. Having the ability to turn it on and off when you need it is also nothing to be sniffed at. This one's decent. The King's Showdown, in some ways, is the most puzzle-like of all of the monster showdowns we've had. It feels very much, like you're trying to get this sort of showdown puzzle solved on the clock. It's, if anything, I'd say the King Showdown it feels the most like a showdown designed by Into the Unknown Studios. ITU do a lot of very puzzle-like showdowns, where you're sort of piecing together how the monster wants you to behave and handle that. And the King is the first Kingdom Death monster that really feels like that as well, where it's setting the rules of engagement and demanding that you follow them and figure them out in order to handle things and mitigate stuff as much as possible. So it's very cool. We'll be getting back to the King faction in a moment, because now we're on to the Lamplighter. So to go back to the beginning of the recording, or near the beginning, this occurs when you've lost to darkness and you've lost the pack, lost the dreaded pack, and disturbed the Lamplighter from its slumber. So it's out there and it's somewhere in your settlement deck. It has a little hand up there to indicate you don't put it in at the start, but once it's in, it is coming for you. And when you draw it, a monster reaches a settlement. It blinks for the first time in years, breaking bacteria-rich deposits within its cavernous irises and causing a bioluminescent reaction. Its haloed gaze shines upon the settlement, frying its lanterns. The survivors' worth spheres are realised. They panic, vomiting as they spread themselves on the ground. And then we have a simple yes or no situation. Do you have a lantern halberd or a guidepost? If you don't, the monster eats 3d10 survivors before leaving satisfied. Do not gain the benefits of the settlement's death principle, and each remaining survivor gains a random disorder. So, 5.5 is the average roll on a d10. So we're looking at 16 to 17 survivors on average being eaten from this. Like, my ideal, I say, is go for a settlement of around 20 plus. Don't stop until you're at 20 plus. So this shouldn't cause a settlement wipe, but it could do because you're already in a really bad spot if you've been playing with the scout, and the Lamplighter is already in the deck because you've lost your pack and you've lost a ton of gear. If you do have a Lantern Halberd or Guidepost, the monster pinches the light, hissing in pain. It leaves burnt flesh behind. You archive the Lantern Halberd or Guidepost and gain 1 white charcoal, which is this perfect organ. And if the settlement does not have a dreaded pack, they may archive this to wrap it in bundles of cloth and regain the scout gear grid. So now we have the complete picture of what the Extinguished Guidepost was at the start. Is a guidepost to be put down. A Lamplighter had interacted with it, burnt itself, and fled, leaving just the guidepost and the portion of itself, this white charcoal, this waxy, pale, semi sort of, what is it described as, like covered, cartilage-ish sort of covering. You feel what this came from. That's the Lamplighter, which is this boy. Now, we can get a Guidepost via the Kingsman giving it to us, which is this card. We can get a Lantern Halberd by yoinking up the Guidepost. We also now have this generic terrain that can turn up occasionally, which is the glowing waypoint, just sitting around, and one would assume this has been planted by a Kingsman to provide a form of like navigation, which the Kings seem to use. And so on a 12 plus we can wrench this from the ground and gain the Lantern Halberd rare gear. So we have ways of getting this. If you're playing with scouts, Facism is a really good philosophy to have because it generates more terrain, and the more terrain you are generating, the higher chance you have of getting access to glowing waypoints, which will give you the Lantern Halberd earlier. Although again, if you've lost a showdown and the Lamplighter has been triggered in the first place, you're already in a really, really bad situation. So that's the main sort of strategy to deal with this, is get yourself a Lantern Halberd. Remember, it's irreplaceable, so don't be taken out if you can avoid it. If you are concerned about this and you're playing with scouts, that's your sort of options. I did want to look at one other thing very briefly, which is I'm not 100% on this, but I think this might be the side profile of a Lamplighter. I'm not certain. It could also be, I've wondered why if it's the Trapdoor Men, but it seems a bit big for that. So I'm now wondering if this is a depiction of the Lamplighter, with the survivors sort of hiding as it travels past. It's hard to say because Lamplighters appear to, they like pinch lights. It seems to be pinching this lantern. Maybe it's been lured in by this lantern. And the reason I think this may now be the Lamplighter is if we look at the side profile, we can see we've got this jaw with these hanging down teeth, these glowing, almost like, well, it describes it up here, was it? Haloed gaze. You got a little bit of haloed gaze going on. We got these very distinct sort of spikes coming off what could be fur and tufts here on the elbows. And we come up here and we see this is a tufted furred creature. It's got some similarities in the fur there. It has the similar sort of jaw with these larger teeth and then a bunch more, and a very wide open jaw with the eyes and these curved fingernails that are present in both cases on spindly-ish arms and a more narrow waist. It's hard to say for sure, but maybe this is the Lamplighter. I don't think this adds too much if it is or isn't, but it's kind of a fun thing to talk about. Yeah, so that's the overview of all of them and analysis of all of the bits and pieces. Time to just kind of finish with a few extra thoughts. So, for me, the scout system is it's a bit of a failure. The original pitch I was very interested in. The original pitch was like, it was that you would have the scout to explain why the gear comes back, and they would be duty bound to observe and record, but not interfere unless you innovated this death pact. So you had this decision of, I have this fifth survivor, but if I deploy them, then I'm risking everything. And that was the bit of scouts that had me really excited. This system as it stands, where you always have to be putting the scout into it, I don't like how that makes me play. Because suddenly everything is like up for ante. I'm gambling my best gear every time, and if I lose, I'm going to be set back. It encourages a play style that is hyper conservative. No fun is not allowed. You need to bring overbearing power onto the monster at every opportunity. If we had more resources, it wouldn't be so bad, because we could build contingencies of like, okay, if I lose this, I've got this one step lower kind of armor. But Kingdom Death's constantly squeezing you for resources for a long time, until you get sort of mid to late game, when suddenly you're swimming in them. And so that sort of amplifies the issue of the game, which is it's snowbally. Early on, you're desperately trying to gather speed and get your snowball rolling in order to build enough momentum, enough power, enough tempo that the game can't stand up against you, and then you can keep leveraging that into win. And when you're doing that, the scout suddenly is a 5th survivor on the board, a whole bunch of extra survival actions, more damage, or interacting with terrain, all that kind of stuff. And that is really not ideal. It's not really what I want from the game. So I like everything about the scout system in theory. I like the world building it adds. I love things like this piece of artwork. It's gorgeous, but overall, I don't like how it plays in practice. I would have preferred to have a 5th survivor along for the hunt, leading the way, trailblazing, triggering those cool scout events, and then not have them involved in the showdown unless I really want to risk it, which I wouldn't do most of the time, because without the scout I can roll 3 survivors in with sensible gear and 1 with whatever goofy stuff I'm testing. With the scout, it's 4 survivors in with sensible gear. So I'm not super thrilled about that. The tight gear grid as well is a constant issue. Kingdom Death always has this slot issue where, because you can only put up to 9 gear cards per survivor, a lot of gear cards never get used because they cannot justify their existence, because there's just better options. Sure, the scout gives you 4 more slots, but it's also the only place you can put the scout gear, so suddenly there's all of this stuff competing with each other, and you need some kind of defense. You probably want the Stone-Faced Cloak. You need something to help with your movement, so Vermin Bellyboots or some other set of boots from a different monster, and then we've got a weapon which asks us to give up 2 slots as well. So that puts us in a position where the Scout Lantern is so much better than these others that, well, why would we care? We got this, and maybe this. Like, some combination of these 5 is what we care about. And we probably prefer to have a different set of boots that can actually join to the Reaperjaw if we're going Reaperjaw Grimjaw. So this happens time and time again for me, which is excuse me, I'm just I'm looking at this and I'm like, okay, well, I guess I can't fit all of these on. There's no point me having the Grimjaw if I'm not activating that. So it's really awkward. Now, one of the things that really helps with this a lot is if you can generate either extra slots or you can generate extra armor points. So one example to think about is this. So this is the second stomach, which comes from the Gourmandism. It just gives you an extra slot that you can put a gear card on. So now suddenly I can pop my Scout's Lantern over here on that, boom, job done, there we go, lovely jubbly. And then I've got room to say wear this and then have some pair of boots with left facing red to slot into here to complete the grid. And so second stomach is one of the most important status cards. It's one of the reasons I love Gourmandism as a philosophy. Frustratingly, you get 1 copy of this card in the gambler's chest. I don't understand why they didn't give us 4 or even 5, because I actually there's a lot of times I want to trade a knowledge slot for a gear slot because the gear will do more, especially if I've got romanticism as well. So I can have 3 normal slots, romantic, and then a second stomach, and that is like a really great loadout. So that's one like solution to help here. That frees us up with 1 slot, so we've now got 4 for other things. The other one is, I think it's osteophage. Is it osteophage? Yes, osteophage. Oh, well remembered. So this is from Marrowism, which you get via being a cannibal, via Marrow, by Skull Eater, the event. And osteophage, when you depart with no armor and no shield in your gear grid, add 6 armor points to all hit locations. So suddenly we don't need this. We got 6 armor in all hit locations. We got 4 slots to do what we like with. So, you know, that is, these are really great for that. There's also in this book, if I think I can actually get there a little bit quickly, if we go past Penis Crazy Man, alright, here we get Overwhelming Dark, no, Overwhelming Darkness, Mineral Gathering, post Overwhelming Darkness Mineral Gathering, gives us access to Crystal Skin via the lake, and here we are at the Crystal Lake. Here, so Crystal Skin, when you ignore Cursed and cannot wear armor. When you depart, gain 3 armor points to all hit locations, and you suffer minus 2 all severe injuries. So we can have 3 armor points to all hit locations instead of what we're being offered from these 4 armor slots. So we got 4 slots free there. So that's kind of what we're trying to do, and one of the best ways to make Scout work on that front. But that is honestly the same with all survivors. I'm constantly trying to get Crystal Skin or Marrowism's Osteophage and the second stomach online in order to alleviate the pressures of a 9-slot gear grid where 5 pieces are taken up by armor, so you don't get to play with many weird and unusual other stuff, because you need a weapon, you need your armor, etc, etc. Anyway, so the end result is I'm not playing with the Scout in any of my more relaxed, chill kind of sessions. I only break the Scout out when I have to test the new Scout Discovery cards, and otherwise I play with house rules to include the Scouts. I think just having a Scout for introducing a new group is super good if you just ignore that archival section of the Outskirts, and there is on my Patreon there's some versions of that I did for 5 and 6 player modes, and they've been really enjoyable because the Scout experience is amazing from a thematic standpoint, and there's some really interesting gear and it's fun to play with, but the mechanics as they stand force you to really just take no nonsense from the monsters and shut them down as effectively and efficiently as possible, because you do not want to risk your gear ever, and for me that's just not fun. Either you're struggling and you're flailing around and you're having a bad time, or you've got an extra survivor on the board and you're leveraging everything you've got and you're steamrolling the campaign. And that's why you'll find some people say I don't like Scouts, they make the game too hard, and others say I like Scouts because they make the game easier, or I don't like them because they make the game easier. It's because they amplify the feast and famine portion of the game, and that all or nothing that the showdowns often represent, where even if you critically wound the monster, you can't recover those resources that you may have generated from extra drops unless you win, is one of the it's one of the cornerstone portions of the game, but it's also one of the places with the most friction. And with the Scout amplifying that, it's hard to justify its existence. But if you do, I would recommend playing alongside with Marrowism. So take Cannibalize as your principal, and try and get Gourmandism and try and get Second Stomach, all of which can help make the Scout a bit more friction free, because when you've only got 4 slots, the gear grid can feel incredibly boring and rote, because you're just like, okay, here's my Scout's Lantern, and I need my weapon to attack with. And given that I can't wear a full armor set, I'm going to take my Cloak, so I've at least got some protection of my head and body, which are body gets hit the most, head's the most vulnerable, and then I need something to help with my movement or some other flex slot maybe I can put in there. This could be a different weapon. Like I say, I think a bow's quite good, a spear's solid and excellent, a halberd's really good, but ultimately there is going to be a weapon there. Maybe if you can manage to outrun Fist and Tooth, then that can be occupying the slot, but the difficulty with this gear group with Fist and Tooth is your Fist and Tooth quote-unquote weapon is the Lucky Charm. And that requires 2 blue affinities, which is, you can see it's a little difficult to achieve on this kind of grid, because we need to have one here, and then we've got to have a blue connection between these, so even that struggles a bit, so you need other things like acid, palms, and similar. So that, in all, that's sort of a lot of thoughts and bits and pieces about the Outskirts and the Scout system. I think it's a nice try, but it is overall a swing and a miss. It joins the ranks of things that I like from a thematic standpoint, but I don't enjoy the mechanics of so much, which includes the Kingsman, the hand, the normal hand that is, and the Phoenix, all of which I think are better on paper than they are in actual practice, although the Phoenix has improved over the years. So that's it. That's the Outskirts and you. That's my review of the Scout system. I won't really be going back to this in any videos or even any articles, except for when new Quarry releases add that extra Scout discovery bit. Otherwise, this is a portion of the game that I'm just leaving in the box, unless I'm playing it with house rules, because it's not my jive, it's not my jam. You may enjoy it more, but I gotta say, if this was a separate expansion rather than part of the Gambler's Chest, I wouldn't be recommending it for most players. I don't think it's improving the game. It's changing it, but I don't think what you get afterwards is better. In fact, for my tastes, I think it makes the game a little bit worse. So, Scouts, 9 out of 10 flavour, 4 out of 10 execution. And that's it. So, thanks for watching. And as I said, if you want to support these videos and help me fund a computer that can run the simulator, you can do so in the Patreon in the description or via Ko-fi. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you next time, which is in the video which is with my editor on the Smog Singers. So I will see you then. Happy hunting.